Hello. In this video we will demonstrate the manual receiver function of the DS1. Now I've got a 24 millimeter 145 millimeter long bolt here, standard bolt. This is not a problem to read, it's just something I have to demonstrate the receiver on. But anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to set this up, a little dab coupling on it. Put the 5 megahertz transducer on it. You typically would use a better transducer, bigger diameter transducer for this, but it works fine. So our bolts all set up. Our temperature transducer is reading temperature of the ambient room, no problem. So I've already set up the DS1 with a project, and the bolt type is all there. And again, this is just to demonstrate the advanced receiver mode, manual receiver mode of the DS1. So we'll go measure it, temperature, goes off, searches, gets the best signal, amplitude, sets the threshold. I mean, it comes back with a real nice trace. So now we'll go take a look at the scope. Nice signal, 5 megahertz within the parameters of the receiver, not a problem. Now you can see that the threshold is up here somewhere, and we're triggering zero crossing on the falling wave, so we have a positive polarity signal. The DS1 has chosen the positive polarity and the threshold to trigger on the zero crossing. If we hit adjust, we go into the manual receiver setting. Now here we have the blue box shows you where the signal zero crossing is on. The positive polarity is lit up red. The negative polarity is not now. So let's say you want to change something around on this particular. Our voltage is count of 13, which is fairly low. So we're pulsing this probably around 10, 12 volts plus or minus. Our gain is 35. Our threshold is 207. So the threshold, you can see the threshold is there. If I want to lower the threshold, I hit the negative threshold, and you can see the threshold going down 190. If I want to move the signal over so you can see it better, the arrows, the carets move it. The double carets move it a screen away. The single carets move it just a few microseconds. The time on the bottom of the screen is the length to the center of the screen. Now, if I want to put the signal, if I move the signal around, I want to put the signal, the zero crossing back in the center of the screen. You see Z bar here. Hit Z bar, and it puts a zero crossing in the center of the screen. We're reading about 143.82 millimeters. So we brought the threshold down. I can bring the gain up. I mean the voltage up. You can see it saturates the signal, and we just jumped a peak. You saw this first peak jump through the threshold. I can bring it back down by bringing the threshold up. That's not a good way to do it anyway. We're back to 143. I can bring the gain down. Bringing the voltage up has the same effect as bringing the gain down. We bring the gain down. The DS1 operates at the smaller amount of voltage on the pulsar is the best way to go because it takes less power, creates less noise, and the Z right caret moves the blue box zero crossing anywhere on the signal. If you want to change the zero crossing on that polarity, of course we can always on the reference length. You can change the polarity. So let's move the Z bar back. So now we're triggering the first negative going echo. Our threshold is now 50, and so the threshold goes from 0 to 255. So if you're above 128, there's the middle line, and the threshold flips from 50. If I move the polarity back, it goes up to 205 again. But I move the Z bar around, so now we want to get back to the signal around. Now, AGC works in this screen, so we want to adjust the signal automatically, and we're back. So it's a full function oscilloscope on the echo signal. You can move, like I said, you can move it around gross-wise, a full screen. You can change the voltage on the pulsar. You can change the threshold. And then if I go polarity, you can see the threshold goes down to the negative side of the peak. I put the threshold back on the positive side, and the gain you can adjust. Again, if you hit AGC, it'll automatically go back. Back puts you to the right, to the main scope. Now, if I change the polarity and go back to the main scope and then hit peak again, it's going to go back and use the polarity that you had chosen in the reference in the scope. But we don't want to do that because it's an okay signal. You got a negative signal here, but the gain is a little high. So we'll hit the positive peak again, go back to the main scope, hit peak again. It'll go back and readjust the whole signal again and come back and give you the original setting. So if you get lost in the manual scope mode, then the adjust button, go back to the main scope, hit peak again, it'll go and reset. If you're in your reference length, you just go back and back out. It'll redo the whole bolt again. So until you store the reference length, it does not remember the receiver settings. So we'll accept that. We'll go back to elongation. We can go back to scope. We'll blow the signal up a little bit. And you can go into adjust here if you need be. Remember, if you're tightening a bolt and it bends, it's going to distort the signal. You can come back in, and if the amplitude of this peak comes up because of bending, you can adjust the Z, the caret Z, to bring the signal back to the zero crossing you were on. You can store the trace from here, so that's stored it off into a file where you can go into Excel. You can download it to your PC and go back into Excel and save and take a look at it. Everything is here, AGC and peak. Do the same thing. Let's go back here and bring the gain down. Okay, so again, back up a little bit, bring the gain down, go back to the main signal, hit AGC, comes right back up to the proper trace. AGC works in 99.9% of the time. When you come back into from your taking your zero reading, come back to elongation. If there's a problem with the signal, AGC brings it back up and we're done. So that's the function of the manual oscilloscope in the DS1.